The man who literally broke the internet with his book launches and taken the entrepreneurship community by storm and grew his following to a point where, he's now basically just a celebrity, not just a successful business owner. How good is he actually at closing deals? In this video, I'm going to review 10 different sales strategies that he teaches and grade them from A+ tier to F tier. Now, you might be thinking, who is this random guy on YouTube that's going to see if Hormozi himself is actually good at sales or not? So if you are new here, welcome. My name is Christian Jack, and in the past 3 years, I've generated over $100 million in sales across 21 different industries. I've trained thousands of sales reps in over a dozen industries who have 2x, 10x, even 30x their commissions. And I've personally invested now nearing $1 million in learning sales, psychology, neuroscience, belief architecture, biohacking, and so much more. Now, I've created this channel to share some of what I've learned on my path to achieving true freedom in sales so that you can fast track your path to it as well. And of course, if you're a returning member, thank you so much for being here. I've got another banger for you here today.
The most used close that I use in transactional selling is the reason close and then followed by a best case, worst case. Usually you get to a point in this area where you need to transition. And so you're like, hey, the reason we have these kind of results, the reason we have this kind of success is because, and then you have some sort of reason. Now that reason can be whatever you want it to be. And it's because we're unique. It's because our product works. It's because of this method. The point is that whatever you say the reason is, people's mind will believe because they believe whatever happens because. After I have that, that's usually when you make the first ask. And then if the person doesn't immediately say yes, I say, hey, well, let's just look best case, worst case, right? Best case scenario, we change your life, everything's amazing. Worst case, you get all the service for us for free and you still lose nothing besides the 6 weeks.
Okay. So I don't hate that. The reason behind things, it's okay. If you've got a super logical buyer, then it's probably going to work fairly well. If you have an emotional person, it's not going to work at all. So Alex is kind of learning how to sell to himself and what's worked for him because he's a very logical person. That's just kind of the way that he sells. It's based off of logic. However, you and I both know occasionally there's that type of prospect in your sales calls who just doesn't really think all that logically, right? You've tied down all the things that make sense and like A to Z sounds good, but something still happens. So there's still those prospects who operate emotionally. So just purely logical selling won't work with them. You need something else. But if you are speaking to somebody who is purely logical, I think this is fantastic. So I'm going to rate this as B tier. It's decent. All right, here we go.
Because it wasn't about money, right? It was about looking a certain way, which is kind of it's just not a good position to be in. Yeah, they're already kind of weird. I try and make them feel okay about being there. But then when we get to price, because a lot of guys are cheap when it comes to a gym, because you'd be like, I can't afford that. I'd be so weird. I was I got all the vibes that you're the type of person that money wouldn't be a concern. They have to decrease their own status to say no, and then knock them.
Yeah, so he's using this one as kind of an aside, it seems like in a conversation. So I don't expect it to be really that good. It doesn't seem to be. Just selling to cheap customers. At the end of the day, if you've got somebody who just is cheap as a human being, they usually have one or two situations. Number one, they have a price anchor in their mind that they expect this to be, and it's a lot cheaper than maybe what you're charging. And number two is that they don't have a price anchor set in their mind, but they just always want some sort of deal. They want a discount, they want something for nothing. And so either way, you kind of have to treat these differently. If they just have a lower price anchor in their mind, then you need to raise that price anchor throughout the call and discovery with numbers. How much are you actually losing XYZ month over month? Okay, multiply that by 12. Over the next 10 years of running the business, how much is that? Oh, it's 700 grand. Okay, so this is just 4 grand to fix that. It's easy at that point. But then the type of prospect who just always needs something for nothing, it depends on what you want to do. I'd say the easiest way to do this, it's not the most ethical way, so I'm not going to necessarily recommend that you do this. I will say that I have done this in the past. I try not to anymore. But basically, you just inflate your price at first so that they feel like they're getting a deal by coming down. The other side of that, if you do want to be more ethical, which is a way that I teach my students to do this, is play with deliverables, okay? Deliverables can change. Timelines, what they want here, what they want there, but the price should largely stay the same. So the price of the program doesn't change, but what they get along with it can change. This is just classic negotiation 101. The more terms that you can bend on, the more that you're going to win the negotiation, more often than not. So just find however many terms you can that you can fit to whatever it is that they want, and that is the number of ways that you can make the deal happen, as opposed to they're just one that they want less price. So This one I'm going to say is D tier. Not great. All right, here we go.
Sales tactic that has directly made over $35 million. One day, I'd sold a bunch of people into a new program that was starting, and I was probably like 15 orientations deep, and I just headed no after no. And finally, I was sitting down, and this nice lady walked in, and she had like a nice ring and a nice purse. She sits down. I remember getting to the end of the presentation, and I just said, hey, so with the program, you want chocolate or vanilla for your protein? And she was like, which one do you like? And I was like, chocolate. She was like, all right, I'll take one of those. For the pre-workout, do you want to do kiwi or strawberry? I like the kiwi. She was like, okay, I'll do that one. So I said, do you want to just use the cards you have on file? And she was like, yeah, that's fine. And then I took these off the shelf and I slid them over to her. She grabbed them and she smiled and she walked out of the facility and I made my first supplement sale. And I was like, holy I didn't even talk at all about what these even did. I just simply asked her which one she wanted. And the key was, I didn't ask her whether she wanted them. I asked her which one she wanted. That is when I was introduced to the assumed close. It is one of the strongest upsells in all of business.
Well, the assumed close. It depends on who you're speaking to, how much confidence and trust they have in you. But the assumed sale does work pretty well. I'm going to put this one in A tier without really even going too deep into it. I will give the caveat that, again, you need to have their confidence, you need to have their trust, you need to have the authority in the situation. And if that's the case, then yeah, you can just assume the close and they'll do fine. Now, one very important thing about this that Alex did that he didn't mention is the option close. This is technically an option close. It's kind of assuming the sale, but it's largely an option close. It's do you want this or do you want that? It's different than just assuming the sale would just be, okay, I assume you want to use your card on file for these. And like, you don't even give them the options of what they want. An option close is like, okay, do you want this program or do you want that program? And then what he did was he built up what's called entrainment by having her choose things that like she knew that she wanted essentially. And then asking for the close after that, which is like, do you just want to use the card that you already have on file? So it's basically getting somebody to make an easy decision, and then the next decision by default is going to feel easier than it did before because you've already gotten them to make decisions. So it's classic business principles. It's not even sales really at that point. So I'm going to give this A tier. Solid. Here we go.
One of my favorite ways to close someone is to just say whatever thing they said they're struggling with that they're not sure about, you just say, hey, in a hypothetical world where that didn't exist, would you say yes? And whatever it is, if that thing doesn't exist and they say sure, then you literally now have only one thing you need to solve to get the sale, right? So if you're tired of having people give you obstacle after obstacle after obstacle, you just say, hey, if you had the time, would you do it? And if they say yes, then it's like, cool, let's figure out how to get you the time, right? And then you can solve one problem and make the deal. And the same thing is, hey, if your wife were on board, would you do it? Okay, cool. Then what do we need to do to figure out so she wouldn't be worried about it, right? And so whatever the thing is, you just say, hey, in a hypothetical world where that didn't exist, would you do it? Cool. And then you can close the one isolated variable to get the deal done.
Okay, so this one is pretty decent. It's isolating the objection is really all that he's doing. The only caveat that I would say to his method, isolating the objection, A+ tier, 100%. I teach my students to do this all the time through my own framework. However, it doesn't use the word hypothetical. And that's where I have a little bit of a grievance with what Alex is doing here, because hypothetically, if you could fly, would this make, yes, sure, whatever. People will just say yes for the sake of saying yes. But what you want to do instead is, yes, isolate the objection, but don't do it hypothetically. Actually isolate it. Actually say, aside from that one thing, is there anything else that would stop you from doing X and Y and Z? No, there's not. Are you sure? Yes, I'm sure. Okay. So if we were able to solve that, you would want to move forward. Yes. So you're isolating three and like tying it down 3 different times so that you can then go and handle that thing. I do like the idea of isolating and handling, but the word hypothetically throws it all off. So if you use with the word hypothetically, I'm probably going to give this like C tier or D tier because it's a pretty strong disqualifier for me. If you don't use the word hypothetically, A+ tier all day.
How's your week going? Great. I know we've got limited time here. Blah, 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 blah. Nope. Hey, my name's John. I'm here from this company, and I have a background in ABC, which is specific to whatever problem that you want to solve. I work closely with so-and-so edified person that you saw in the webinar,
and I would love to know what resonated most with you. The real purpose of this call is to see if you qualify for our guarantee. Not everyone does, and it's really based on these 3 factors. So if it's B2B, you'd be like business size, industry, and you're being the owner. Now, instead of a guarantee, you could also say, hey, we want to make sure that you qualify for the bonus, or hey, I want to make sure that you qualify for starting by this time. You're immediately taking it away and saying, hey, I'm not here to sell. I'm here to first make sure that I can even give you something. And automatically they're leaning in and they're like, ooh, I want something that I'm not immediately having. So you're in the driver's seat. They're the ones who are on the other side hoping to earn your favor.
Okay, so this one is interesting. Yeah, this is interesting. So what he's doing is he's just flipping the frame, and something super duper common in sales, but I don't know that I love the way that he's going about it. That first question, if you call somebody after a webinar or something and you're like, hey, what was it that resonated with you the most? If you have a lower sophistication audience, that can work well. If it's a higher sophistication audience, you're going to be screwed. So make sure that you make that distinction. It's not my favorite opening question. I would definitely use something else. However, what he's done after that is saying, I'm just calling to see if you qualify for the guarantee. Again, for a lower sophistication audience, sure. Higher sophistication audience, not a chance. So just it's apples and oranges. Like, make sure that you're talking to the right people. Overall, I'd say frame flip is A tier. The way that he's done it, I'm going to give him an F. Honestly, I don't think it's good at all.
My favorite closes, which I got from Jordan Belfort, is fair enough.
Sound fair enough?
I just love this close so much because it's like, fair enough, right? You make a concession, fair enough. So many times people are like, well, they made a concession and I'm a reciprocal human being. It's very hard for me to deny this request. And so, yes, I do believe it's fair. And then you say, boom, then let's move forward. Someone says, that's a lot. And we say, no worries. What if we did this? Fair enough. They say, well, he made a concession. That sounds fair. Or if we did this, does that sound reasonable? That sound like a fair expectation? Yes, it does. Great. And then you can go to close the sale.
Okay, so fair enough close. I've heard this a lot. I've used this a lot, and I've seen a lot of people use it as well. It's all right. I'm going to say it's B tier if you do it very well and if you do it in the right circumstances. Fair enough assumes the paradigm of we are equals in this conversation, which is generally a good frame to take, but it's not always the one that you want to take, right? It's the opposite of, say, in some of the last examples that we've done, flipping the frame, right? Flipping the frame is we're qualifying to see if you can get access to this thing, right? They're below and you're above. If you're selling to really highly sophisticated prospects and you're doing like, I don't know, multi-million-dollar deals and you're just like a setter and they know that you're a setter, and or maybe you're doing like community sales where inside the program you gotta make at least $1 million in order to get in. So like they know that they have more money than you, they know that they have more success than you, and like you're the gatekeeper, but still like they can probably just go around you for whatever it is that they want. That's where they're above and you're below. So this fair enough close, you have to have the frame of you are equals and you are negotiating on finding the best way forward for them on their side and you on your side. So just make sure that you have that if you're going to use this. If so, I'm going to give it B tier, but it's very easy to get wrong to where this will be an absolute F tier if you're not careful. And with the wrong audiences, they're not even in the right headspace to be able to truly negotiate. So for better or for worse, with the right people, B tier. All right, here we go.
It actually differs a lot with sales cycle. With B2C, you can usually sell on first transaction. Average ticket size is usually going to be under $600. Those are the types of purchases people can make on an impulse in the moment. And so it's going to be a lot of salesmanship and a lot of sweat. And so whether that's you're running ads straight to phone call or ads straight to in-person appointment, those are things that you can do pretty much like one and done. Very little branding is required in order to get somebody, especially on a local level, if you're selling like a local service. If you're going B2B, it takes more interactions with them. And the goal with a B2B sales process is you want to talk to as many stakeholders as possible in the company, because that increases the likelihood that you're going to get them to buy. And so the bigger the enterprise, the more stakeholders you're going to have to talk to, the more calls it's going to take, the longer it will take, but the stickier the customer and the bigger the contract in general.
Okay, I don't know about this one. I'd say on the B2C side, sure. Largely these days, I'd say anything under like 5K, especially if you have financing options available, you can easily, very, very, very easily do on one call. Like I've done 100K sales on one call. It doesn't matter. It all just depends on the prospect at that point, right? So on the B2C side, I think he's relatively correct. On the B2B side, the strategy is not necessarily to talk to as many stakeholders as possible. It is about talking to the only stakeholders that you need to. That like 90% of the game in B2B is just finding the right person to sell. And once you have them, deal is done. Sometimes it's going to be multiple people. Oftentimes it's going to be multiple people, but it's the right multiple people, and it's not as many people as you can. That just seems really odd for Alex to say. So I'm sure it's just contextual with whatever event he's teaching at, or whatever the environment of this classroom is that it looks like he's teaching in. So overall, I'll say C tier for that one, kind of middle of the road.
And then you go for the close. Like, well, given X, Y, and Z, I will tell you this is extremely expensive. And the reason we say that is because it's even better than a price anchor. Because extremely expensive for everyone is expensive. If I said, hey, Louis, it's $500, just kidding, it's $100, you might have thought 500 and 100 were both cheap. But if I said it's really expensive, whatever I say next is going to either be actually expensive for you, in which case I braced you, which is actually more likely to close the sale, or it will be less than what you perceive as expensive. And you're like, oh, great. Because the problem that most people try and do when they sell is they try and minimize the thing they say next, but it actually has a counteractive effect. You say, it's actually not that much. It's only, all of a sudden people expect low, and then you rip their expectations. And so it's much better to set expectations here, but people are afraid of doing that. But that's not how psychology works. So you set expectations sky high, you anchor, and then when you say reality, it either matches the braced person or it's much lower, which most cases it is.
This is beautiful. This is definitely A+ tier. This comes from straight psychology. There's no marring or molding of the psychological principles in order to fit a sales conversation. Alex is spot on. Number one, he's using price anchoring by starting high, but then also number two, he's using ambiguity, which basically just elevates the use of the anchoring tool even more. So I love this. I'll say something along the lines of, it's probably going to be much more expensive than you'd like it to be in order to fix something like this. Or, are you sure this is going to be, like he says, extremely expensive? And this is fantastic. Now, if you couple this as well in discovery with figuring out what is actually expensive for them, then you can really do wonders with this because, sometimes when you're thinking about pitching somebody, there comes into factor the price, right? And there's certain packages that you probably offer where there are multiple options, but there's certain ones that would fit them better or worse depending on the deliverables, but then also the pricing. So the more that you can discover inside of discovery, what is actually expensive to them, what their baseline is of how much they believe this problem is worth or how much they've spent on it in the past and whether that worked or not. And so they're willing to go bigger, how much bigger they're willing to go, et cetera. Then this now takes on an entirely new utility because you can craft whatever it is that you're selling them based off of their experience. And so then when you use a line like this, it's extremely expensive. You have a baseline to base us off of rather than just hopes and dreams that, you might hit the right kind of pricing range for them. So yeah, A+ tier on this one. Fantastic.
So the way that we train sales is that one, you might love this.
Okay.
So we try and think back to front, which is a lot of people train rapport building first. They train the script top to bottom. Mm-hmm. But if someone knows how to do the first half of the script and they don't know the second half of the script, the likelihood that they can close is zero.
Yes.
If you train people from the back of the script to the front of the script, if someone doesn't have rapport and they don't know the opening questions, but they know how to close, the likelihood they could close is greater than zero.
100%.
And so
100%.
And so for us, my belief from a selling perspective is that if you follow the closer, right, clarify why they're there, all we're doing is asking questions. Mm-hmm. Labeling them is just asking for agreement on one statement that they have the problem. Overviewing past experience is just questions.
Yep. So this is another A+ tier. I tell my students this all the time. Work your way back to front on your sales call. If you're losing deals and you're not sure why, if you're reviewing your sales calls because you closed it, any reasons at all, when you're looking at your call, work your way back to front because the back, if you can figure out why you lost the deal right at the end and figure out how to fix that, then you may save some of the deals that you've lost. Whereas if you just focus on the front end, you're going to create then a completely different outcome. It's like if you imagine a timeline, right? This horizontal line. And, over here is the end of the timeline. Over here is the beginning of the timeline. If you make a change right at the end, then the outcome is going to be slightly different. And you can not change anything else, but get a slightly different outcome, which is good because it's different, but only by a small margin. If you imagine that you took a split off that timeline earlier, then you're going to have so much of the call that is completely new that you did not plan for, that you did not anticipate. And so then there's going to be many, many more variables when fixing the reason why you're not closing as many deals as you'd like. And so when you're talking about troubleshooting, when you're talking about improving in a business, in life, whatever it might be, the more that you can work back to front, the fewer variables there are in the equation, and therefore the more likelihood that you'll be able to solve the problem with greater velocity and greater certainty. So that's what we want, is we want to be able to fix our problems sooner and more easily, more consistently, time after time again. So we work back to front, A+ tier.
And I use this acronym, this moniker, because I say you want to sell the vacation, not the plane flight. But people just want Maui. And so you should be describing the beach and the ocean and what they're going to experience the moment they get into the hotel room, right? And they can open up the curtains and they look out the window. Like, that's what we should be describing, not how they're going to get there. So you sell the vacation, and then ER is explaining their concerns. So once you sell the vacation, that's when you make the ask. And then E&R is, okay, if they don't say yes immediately, totally reasonable. Most people don't. Expect no.
Yep.
But train for no, because that's where you make the money. And then we explain away their concerns.
Okay, interesting. Selling the dream, yes, A+ tier, absolutely. People don't care about how they get there as long as they get to the destination, and then they get to the destination in the way and in the speed, etc., that they want to. So it's less so about the plane. The more sophisticated prospects that you get, and like the happier that they are with their current circumstances, the more that they care about the journey. So I'd say A+ tier in that focus on the outcome that they actually want, rather than the nitty-gritty steps that are necessary in order to get there. I think that's what Alex is actually trying to teach here. He may not necessarily be explaining it in the best way. Yeah, it's okay. I'd say that concept, A+ tier. The explaining away the concerns, D tier, probably. Yeah, probably D tier, because you don't explain away concerns generally unless you have a really good frame with a prospect of having authority and them believing you and trusting you and like everything is in the right place. Then yes, you can just explain away why their concerns are dumb and they shouldn't have them and why they're holding them back, etc. But the key word is explaining. So I don't know, that's probably D tier. But selling the outcome, fantastic.
Rich people have the same problems that poor people do. They just want them solved differently. The big thing we want is we want to deliver a big dream outcome. We want to deliver an outcome that they want. Number two, we want them to believe with very high confidence that if they work with us, they're going to get what we promised. On the bottom side, they want it to be incredibly fast, and then they want to have as little effort and sacrifice as humanly possible, because the money is never an issue. It's how much are you going to ask of my time and how painful are you going to make this for me?
Okay, interesting. Selling to rich people, having a big dream outcome, and then having as little time, effort, energy required as possible. It depends, okay? How do I want to explain this? I would say overall C tier on this one. Because yes, if what you are selling them really isn't that important to them and they don't enjoy it, and you aren't able to sell them on the enjoyment of it. So as an example, maybe somebody's super duper rich and they want to have a F1 team, right? Like Formula One car driving. If they don't really care about Formula One and you're trying to sell them on that, then sure, just go for the big dream outcome and then don't really care about all the rest. Minimize how much they have to do. Say you have the systems in order, like there's a coaching program to teach founders how to get into F1. Like it's a whole thing. But most people, you have to understand this, most people who get into F1 and own an F1 team don't want to not be part of the process. They actually enjoy it. They love motorsports. They love the thrill. They love race day. They love every part of it. And that's why they want to start one in the first place. So you have to know what you're selling to who and why it matters versus why it doesn't, right? If you're coming to me to talk about a basic mundane service like being a chef for me, or like washing the cars or whatever it might be, then yeah, I don't give a fuck about like what happens in the middle. I just want it done so that I don't have to worry about it and in the shortest time possible with good service, right? But if it's something that I super care about, then absolutely that matters. So some nuance here. Overall, I'd say C tier. If you do it the right way, then yeah, this can be A tier.
Imagine you go to a dinner party with your mom and her friend's like, what do? And you need to sell her. you wouldn't start by saying, I'm the top affiliate marketer or whatever. You start with, okay, have you ever bought stuff on the internet before? Did you know that there's some people that when you click that, they actually made money, but they didn't own the company? They're like, huh. And you're like, yeah. And the way it works is something called affiliate marketing. And basically, instead of trying to build a whole product, you just find stuff that people are already buying or that you'd recommend to a friend anyways, and you just get paid for it. So have you ever recommended anything to anyone before? And they're like, well, yeah. It's like, okay, did you get paid for it? And they're like, no. It's like, would you like to? Yeah. Now we have a lead.
Okay, so this is pretty good. Alex is actually a lot better at this than people realize. He was doing this on the fly, so you can tell that he's not the most practiced at it. However, you know that he knows the principles because all this is just marketing, all right? Selling to unaware customers is marketing. Marketing is the idea of introducing a brand new idea and moving that customer along from unaware to aware, and then doing a lot of things in the middle to get them ready for a salesperson to then actually like have the conversation with them. But sometimes when you're in sales, you're on an offer where marketing is pretty shitty or non-existent at all. Sometimes you're even just cold calling and you need to know how to sell these sorts of things. So what you need to understand with this is the attention span of your prospect, if you will. Everything that you say can either buy you the next couple of seconds or they become disinterested. So all that you have to do is, you've probably heard of hooks inside of marketing before. It's like the first couple of seconds of a video. You just have to do that with your prospect over and over and over again. So like as an example, if somebody is interested in making more money, and like we know that, right? I might just ask them, hey, do you want to make more money? And they'll be like, yes, I do. It's like, well, do you want to do it in a way where you don't actually have to do any work? Yes. Okay, so now you're buying the next couple of seconds every time. Well, there's this way of doing this that you may have never heard of. Let me ask you this. Have you ever referred a friend over to like a product or a service that you like? And they'll be like, well, yes, I have. Okay, what was it? When was that? And you just get them talking, and essentially every little line that you have, every question will buy you the next few seconds. And that length of time basically lengthens the longer you go about it. So your first question might buy you the first 3 seconds. The next one might buy you 5 to 10 seconds. The next one might buy you 10 to 30 seconds. And so you buy yourself more time, more wiggle room to, potentially mess up or say the wrong thing or go a little more slowly, etc., as time goes on. Overall, though, I know Alex knows this fantastically well. Just like I said, he may not necessarily be the most practiced at it as he used to be. But it's clear he knows how to do this because he markets extremely well for his businesses, and that's all that selling to unaware customers really is.
I remember the first time somebody walked in, he's like, oh, go sign this girl up. No training, no script, no nothing. He just said, go sign this girl up. I had no idea what I was doing. The girl came in and I was like, yeah, so the gym's $129 a month or whatever it is, and you want to sign up? And she was like, yeah, I don't have my credit card with me. I just have to go get it. I was like, okay. And then I walked out 2 minutes later and I was like, yeah, she's going to sign up. He was like, you closed her in 2 minutes? And I was like, yeah, I guess. He's like, you got the card? And I was like, no, but she'll be back. She said she's just going to go get a credit card. He's like, and it was like a bunch of guys around. They all cracked up because I had no idea how it worked. After that, he's like, dude, if you don't get the card, you didn't close. And so
100% real. If you don't celebrate in sales until the fat lady sings, as they say, until the money is actually across the line. I can't tell you how many times I personally have made the mistake of celebrating a little too early, and how I was taught that lesson over and over and over early in my career, and how often I see reps celebrate before the deal is done. Just don't make the mistake. Wait until the money comes across the line, and when it does, then you can pop, and you can have fun. But this advice is definitely A+ tier. All right, so I think it's pretty clear that Alex Hormozi is pretty good at sales. It's pretty clear that he's a little bit out of practice, but that's completely normal because, he is who he is, and he clearly does plenty well in other areas. It's not really his job anymore to sell as much. But it is mine. So if you want to learn some of the things that we've been talking about in this video, maybe I just glossed over it and you want to dive a little bit deeper, you can for completely free down at the link in the description below. You get access to my free sales training called the Sales Dojo. Inside is all the stuff that we've talked about and so much more. So if you would like to get access to that, the live coaching calls, the scripts, the frameworks, all the fun stuff, then hit that link down below and I will see you inside.